We are less than 1 month away from Election Day. On the campaign trail over the weekend, Donald Trump made his return to Butler, Pennsylvania, which was the site of the July assassination attempt against him. He was accompanied by Elon Musk. Proof that Pennsylvania is a crucial state for both campaigns. Trump has 2 more rallies scheduled there this week. Vice President Harris sat for 2 high-profile interviews, one in old media, talking to 60 Minutes, and one with new media, appearing on Call Her Daddy, one of the country's top podcasts, which an original 60 Minutes viewer would describe as being racy and risque. CBS News chief election and campaign correspondent Robert Costa joins me now. Bob, I want to ask you about some work you were doing. On CBS Sunday Morning, you interviewed Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, the Republican who resisted Donald Trump's effort to overturn the vote in that state in 2020. You asked him about members of the Georgia Election Board who are asking to make changes in the way votes are counted for 2024. So let's listen to what he had to say, and then I want to get your reaction.
Are any of the changes put forward by the state election board necessary?
No.
Not one?
Not one.
You say things are safe and secure in Georgia, yet this election board keeps making rule after rule after rule. What's going on?
I think that many of them are living in the past, and they can't accept what happened in 2020.
So, Bob, what does that mean for this crucial state of Georgia and the counting and election night? How should we think about what the Secretary of State said there?
John, great to be with you. If on election night it's evident that Vice President Harris or former President Donald Trump win Georgia by a landslide and that there's no question about who won the state, then there won't be any issue. It'll be evident based on the vote count that somebody won. But if it's close, you're looking at potential chaos in Georgia because the state election board, in brief, which is a group of, it's a majority Republican, but there are some others on the board, have come up with these new rules and regulations to voting that have complicated the system, and they've created a lot of frustration for different election officials I've spoken with for CBS Sunday Morning in recent weeks about how you can challenge voter registrations at a high volume. If you're just an everyday citizen, you can question registration of your neighbors and others in the state. Thousands of those challenges could happen rather than a contained amount like it used to be in the past. And you have the history of 2020 in Georgia hovering over everything, and the questions about the integrity of the state, even though Raffensperger and Governor Brian Kemp, a Republican, say everything's fine in Georgia. So many questions linger. It's evident on the ground, especially speaking to Trump supporters. So you're looking at a potential tense situation where the vote, if it's close, is going to be contested and litigated once again.
The New York Times did an analysis, Bob, over the weekend, showing that Trump's speeches are getting longer and more negative from the last time he ran, which the paper attributed to his age, interviewed some experts about that idea. He'll be the oldest president ever inaugurated, should he win. It's always been a challenge for Trump's team to keep him on message. Has that challenge gotten harder as he's gotten older?
John, I was just with him. I spoke with you earlier last week about Trump from his rally site in Saginaw, Michigan. And it's clear to me that this is Trump as he's always been. He speaks often at these rallies for over an hour. He indulges at times in his grievances. He will go off topic, but he does have a message on the economy, on border security. And with Trump, it's not only always about having that prioritized political message, it's about entertaining the crowd, those watching online, those watching inside the arena or the event site. And you see Trump trying to perform at times to keep people engaged, to give people a show. And so while some Trump allies might be concerned that he's going on far too long in some of these speeches, it's par for the course for Donald Trump. And inside his campaign, there's an acceptance of who he is at this age, of how he is at this stage of his political career. There's no one who's trying to say, hey, former President Trump, maybe try to give a 20-minute speech instead of a 75-minute speech, because they know that at the end of the day, he's going to win or lose this election, not based on the length of his speeches, but whether he can be cast as a change candidate or not. And as long as he's not veering into controversial territory again and again by maybe calling out, making claims about Vice President Harris that are unverified or talking about her intelligence, if he's not making news but going on long, it doesn't create a problem for most Republicans. But sure, many Republicans tell me they'd like to see a more focused approach.
In the 1960 race, Jack Kennedy went on The Tonight Show, first one ever to go on a late-night talk show. So with that in mind, Kamala Harris appeared on Call Her Daddy, which has a large young female audience. Donald Trump appeared on Theo Von's podcast, where the host referred to him as his homie. Explain what the campaigns are doing here with these particular interviews in both cases.
As much as we appreciate all of the younger viewers who are watching CBS News 24/7, many of those younger viewers are also digesting podcasts and reading newsletters and being in different spaces that are non-traditional. Many of these voters are also apolitical. They don't actually have a political leaning. They might find Trump okay in some respects. They might like Vice President Harris to a point, but not know much about her. So the politicians have to take it upon themselves to fill in the gaps about who they are, what they believe, and that's why entering into these kind of conversations with podcast hosts carries real political capital. And Alex Cooper, the host of this particular podcast Vice President Harris sat with, she has a long history of not really being a political player, being someone who was more in the cultural scene when she rose as part of the Barstool Sports enterprise, now as an independent entrepreneur. So for Harris, she just can't get Democrats rank and file to show up. She needs younger people, women and men who listen to this podcast to come out. And a lot of them don't have full awareness of her at this time, in the sense that when I'm on the trail, she didn't run in a primary campaign. They might not have even watched the convention during the summer. So she's still in introduction phase, even as she closes this campaign.
Meet the voters where they are. Robert Costa from Washington. Thank you so much, Bob.
Thank you.
You can watch Vice President Harris's interview on 60 Minutes, airing tonight on CBS at 8 p.m. Eastern. It will also stream on Paramount Plus.